because it's us. Ow. No, because now they can't see us. No, it's not. Okay. Okay. Well, you go first. Okay. Talk louder.
So, how loud do I talk?
Louder than how you're talking.
Okay. So, there was this boy, and he lived in this house with his parents. And every time he would walk by his own bathroom, he'd see a little girl standing there. A little girl with blonde hair and a rose dress. She was just standing there, still, like she was in a photograph and she couldn't move. And she just stood there. And if he walked into the bathroom, he couldn't see her, but he could still feel her. Eventually, he had a friend come over one day, and she asked her where the washroom was, so he directed her to his washroom. And she walked in, and a couple of minutes later, when she came back down, she said, "You know, there's a little girl there in the bathroom." He's like, "Yeah, one with blonde hair and a pink dress." She's like, "Yeah, it's a little girl, but she's not a little girl." He said, "Yeah. For the rest of the week, neither of them used that bathroom." And then a few years later, he moved out, and he and a friend went back to pick up some stuff that he had took with him when he moved out.
Keep talking.
And they were pulling in, and his friend, you could tell that his friend was nervous, that there was something bugging him. And then when they got into the house, they got some stuff together, and then the friend asked if he could go to the washroom, so he went to the washroom, and he said, "There's a little girl in there, but she's not a little girl, and she's not angry, because you left, and you weren't supposed to leave." That's it.
Okay. I'll go.
Okay.
So this one I learned while I was at camp, which I shouldn't have learned while I was at camp because it's really weird to learn if you're at camp. But so this boy, while he was like around 15, he was walking by a train track, and he saw this little girl standing there, and he walked up to her and he heard her saying 42, 42. And he asked her, "What are you doing on the train track?" And she's like, "I'm just counting 42, 42. Then he hears a train coming, and he tells her they should get off. And she's like, "No, just let me count for a little bit more. 42, 42, 42. He saw it getting a lot closer. He said, "We should really go." And she's like, "Hold on, just a little bit more. 42, 42. He realized it was really close now. He's like, "We have to get off the train track." She's like, "Oh, just another second." 42. And at the last second, she stepped off the track and the boy was hit. The train went by and she stepped back on the track. 43, 43. Caitlin, your turn. I thought you had another one.
No.
Make one up. Or search another one up. And I press play.
Okay, so this is like a babysitter one, kind of. So there's this family that moved into this new house. It was a large house, and it had 2 stories plus the basement. And they never went in the basement. There was this door that led to it. out of their kitchen.
Sorry, everyone. Jojo farted.
Oh gosh. Okay. One night the parents were out, and they had hired this young girl to come in and watch their kids for them. So the girl, she put the kids to bed, and she went back down into the living room and was watching TV. And she kind of heard this thumping noise. It was a really windy night. And she figured, oh, it's probably a tree scraping against the side of the house. There's like this constant thump, 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 thump. And she's like, oh, whatever. It's probably just a tree or some branches or something. So she just kept watching TV. She saw the shadow behind her, and she's like, oh, it's probably just the trees waving from the wind. And a couple minutes later, she saw shadow again, but this time it was bigger. She's like, no, it's just a tree. Yeah. She paid no attention to it. Suddenly, she heard slam the door. She turned around, but she couldn't see anything. She walked into the kitchen, and she saw a faint glow coming from underneath the basement door. Like a flashlight was on at the very bottom of the stairs or something. So she opened the door, but it was pitch black. She felt around the walls for a light switch, but she couldn't find one. She walked down the stairs slowly. There was a small window in the corner, and the moon was shining in, letting light in, and she saw these things hanging from the ceiling. She looked around at them, and she's like, what is this? And she could see that they're swaying in the wind. Every now and then they would hit the wall and say, thump, 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 thump. So she walked forward, and she felt her foot get wet from something. And she looked down, she saw this dark puddle. She realized she was right in front of one of the bags, or one of the things hanging from the ceiling. She reached out and she felt it. And it was damp on the bottom, and it was tied up and hanging from the string, from a rope from the ceiling. She reached up and she pulled the rope, and it dropped to the ground. She slowly opened the bag, and she saw the body parts of one of the children.
That's a beautiful story. No.
Well, it's that there was a murderer living in their basement, and whenever he killed someone, he would put them in a bag and hang them from the ceiling.
That's nice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I just remembered an even creepier story, but I forgot about it.
Okay, my story now.
Wait, are you doing your mommy one?
What do you... Okay, so there was this woman who had a child who was about 4 years old, and her child was a girl, and this woman was so much in love with this guy, and one night they went on a date, and he asked her to marry him, but the only problem was he didn't like her child, but since she loved him so much, in the middle of the night, she killed her child. 5 years later, they were married and they had a 2-year-old son. The son was sleeping downstairs and they were sleeping upstairs. So, one night, she heard, "Mommy, I'm in the entryway. Mommy, I'm in the living room." She woke up and looked around. She didn't see or hear anything, and she went back to bed. The next night, she heard, "Mommy, I'm going up the stairs. Mommy, I'm at your door." She woke up and looked around. She saw nothing again. This time her husband woke up with her, and he asked her what was wrong, and she said, "Oh, nothing, I just had a weird dream." So the next night she heard, "Mommy, I'm at the foot of your bed. Mommy, I see you." She woke up and looked around, and her daughter was right next to her at the side of the bed. She screamed in horror. Her husband turned and asked her, "What's wrong, honey?" And she turned and looked at him, then looked back at the daughter was gone. She said, "Oh, nothing, it was just a dream." The next night she heard, "Mommy, you gave me a friend. Mommy, I got a brother." And then she heard a childish scream downstairs. She ran downstairs, as her husband did, to find her son's chopped off head in the living room. They screamed in horror and called the police. They had a funeral 3 months later. And for a couple of months she didn't hear anything. And then a month later, he heard, "Mommy, I want to meet Daddy. Mommy, what's he like?" She woke up and looked around, and she felt a wet puddle by her hand. She turned on her light and saw and looked at where her husband lay. His head was chopped off and nowhere to be found, but his body was there. She screamed in horror and called the police. She had a funeral, and 3 months later, she was not hearing anything, and she was scared though. So one night she called her friend over and said, "I'm not feeling good today. Could you come over and be with me?" Her friend accepted and came over. Her friend slept in the basement, and she slept upstairs in her room. Bad move. So that night she heard, "Mommy, who is she? Mommy, I don't like her. Mommy, it was nice knowing her." And then she heard a scream coming from downstairs. She raced downstairs and turned on the light to find her friend's body decapitated. She called the police, and they ended up getting suspicious. They asked her the next day if she could come into the police station and talk. So she accepted, and she went to bed that night. And then she heard, "Mommy, let's play. Mommy, I'm in the closet. Mommy, come find me." So she was very terrified, but she wanted to get rid of her daughter. So she went to the closet and slowly opened it. She didn't see anything, but she turned on the light, and there was her daughter standing there. Her hair was over her face, and there was a blood stain around her neck. She looked around, and there was a puddle of blood on the floor, and she realized that all of the bodies were there. And she knew that the bodies were collected once before, but she didn't understand why they were there. She fainted on the floor, and the next day she woke up in the hospital. As she was in the hospital, and the next night, she was so terrified. She was under the covers, and she started to hear things, but different things. Whispers that she couldn't make out, and she was just so terrified. And the next night, she heard, "Mommy, you're in pain. Mommy, it's time to join us. Mommy, come home." She poked her head out from under the covers and saw her daughter there along with all of her family. And she said, "What do you want? I don't want you here." And the daughter just replied simply with, "I want my mother." And that's the end of the story. Yeah. Thank you for listening to this, and subscribe and like. And potatoes. Bye-bye.